It's 8 o'clock. This is the UK Tonight. Coming up, a triple murderer found guilty of the rape of his ex-girlfriend on the day he killed her, her sister and her mother. A jury taking just 45 minutes to convict Kyle Clifford of a violent sexual act of spite after he plotted the murder of Louise Hunt following their breakup. She died alongside her mother Carol and her older sister Hannah. Also tonight, the shocking rise in the number of domestic abuse victims taking their own lives. For the first time, the number of suicides surpassing the number of victims killed by their partners, and campaigners want tougher sentences for abusers. I've been speaking to a woman who believes domestic abuse was a factor in her sister's decision to take her own life, but no one has ever been charged with any offence. Plus, we'll get the latest from Cumbria as the 10-year-old girl killed when a car crashed onto a sports pitch in Kendal is named. And the bill aimed at making phones safer for children returns to Parliament tomorrow. We'll find out what campaigners are making of it, with a proposed ban on smartphones in schools already off the table. All that to come, and much more here on the UK Tonight. But first, the triple murderer convicted of raping his ex-girlfriend on the day that he killed her, her sister and her mother. Kyle Clifford plotted the murder of Louise Hunt, the daughter of racing commentator John Hunt, after she ended their relationship. He stabbed her mother Carol to death before killing Louise and her sister Hannah with a crossbow. The jury took less than an hour to find him guilty today of rape. Our crime correspondent Martin Brunt reports.
This was Kyle Clifford moments after killing his 3 victims. The main murder weapon, a crossbow, is hidden under a blanket. He seems remarkably calm and unhurried after what he's just done. Cunning and cold-blooded. The former soldier had been planning the slaughter for 2 weeks. Ever since his girlfriend, Louise Hunt, broke off their relationship, he raped her before he shot her with the crossbow. She died, so too did her sister Hannah and their mother Carol.
He's absolutely sort of cold-blooded and calculated in his actions. There were so many opportunities to step away from what he's doing, but he had a plan from the very outset. That included the pretense to get into the house.
Clifford had an interest in Andrew Tate, the controversial social media influencer. The prosecutor wanted to tell jurors during the trial that Tate's misogynistic views had fuelled the killings, but the judge banned any mention. Tate, he said, was almost a poster boy for misogynists. The connection lacked direct impact on the evidence and would be deeply prejudicial. Clifford bought rope as part of his murder plan, then petrol cans. There was duct tape to tie up Louise before he raped her. At the gym, he used his phone to buy a butcher's knife on Amazon. That's where he got the crossbow too. 4 days later, his own dashboard camera recorded him pulling up near the Hunt's family home. It was just after lunchtime, a Tuesday last summer. He tricked his way into the house by claiming he was returning a bag of Louise's clothes. At that moment, she was working in a hut in the back garden. Carol, the wife of TV racing commentator John Hunt, was the first to die. Clifford stabbed her. When Louise went into the house, Clifford tied her up, gagged and raped her, and held her captive for 2 hours. Then he shot her dead with the crossbow. Hannah arrived, saw what had happened, and texted her partner for help, but then Clifford shot her. She managed to call 999 before she died. After putting the murder weapons in his car, Clifford drove off, heading for North London where he lived. In a cemetery, police and ambulance crews found Clifford seriously injured. He'd shot himself with the crossbow. In hospital, doctors battled successfully to save his life. In a wheelchair, paralysed from the waist down, Clifford refused to answer police questions.
There is nothing about that which suggests that you've gone there for anything else than to kill almost an entire family. I'm right in what I'm saying, aren't I, Kyle?
No comment.
Kyle Clifford is not the first murderer in his family. His older brother Bradley is serving life for running down and beating to death a moped rider who damaged his car. The Hunt family were hugely popular in the town. 2 days after the murders, many mourners attended a regular church service. They included Carol Hunt's best friend.
Just a lovely girl. I just can't believe it's happened. It's, like I say, it's a thing nightmares are made of. She was the nicest, kindest, sweetest person that you could ever meet. Beautiful, beautiful person.
7 months on, with the killer convicted, the victim's family and friends are still struggling to understand how a jilted boyfriend could take such a violent revenge. Martin Brunt, Sky News.
Let's bring you some breaking news now. And the Pope has released an audio message to thank people for their prayers. The Pope, of course, has been in hospital fighting double pneumonia for almost 3 weeks now. Tonight, the Vatican said it will stop issuing daily updates on his condition because, as they put it, the stability of the clinical picture. The audio message released tonight played at the start of evening prayers, which have taken place every night in St. Peter's Square while the Pope has been in hospital.
I thank you from the bottom of my heart for your prayers for my health from the square. I am with you from here. May God bless you and the Virgin protect you. Thank you.
Well, let's just bring you the moment that message was played out in St. Peter's Square a little earlier.
Agradezco de todo corazón las oraciones que hacen por mi salud desde la plaza. Los acompaño desde acá. Que Dios los bendiga y que la Virgen cuide. Gracias.
Let's head straight to the Vatican. Our correspondent Alex Rossi is there, and positive news coming out of the Vatican and indeed from the Pope himself tonight.
Yes, Sarah-Jane, good evening from Rome. The Pope, of course, has been terribly sick. This is his 21st night in hospital. He was admitted to the Gemelli Hospital, which is about 20 minutes from where we are, on 14th of February. So people have been gathering in St. Peter's Square, as you saw, holding a vigil every night, praying for the Pope. They weren't expecting tonight to hear his voice, but we have heard his voice. And I think there's a number of things that we can say about that. I think the first thing is that the quality of his speech, he speaks quite slowly, he's clearly very tired, and he's clearly terribly sick as well. So that's certainly one thing we can say about it. But I think the other thing, on a positive note, the fact that the Pope has felt able to release this voice recording to the faithful here, and of course it will be played around the world to the Catholic communities around the world. The Pope is, of course, the moral authority, the leader of 1.3 billion Catholics around the world. That is a very positive sign as well. Factor in, of course, what they are saying. Doctors have been briefing us tonight about his condition. He has stabilised. He's still having oxygen periodically. He's still having to have a mask, but his blood looks good. The circulatory system, his heart appears to be strong. He doesn't have any fever, and he is responding to the antibiotics that he is being given. He's being administered. But doctors are very, very clear when they say that the situation for the Pope remains extraordinarily complex. He is, of course, 88 years of age. He has problems with his lungs dating back to when he was a young man. He had part of the lobe of his right lung removed. So that picture remains very, very complex. But they are saying as well, because of the stability over the last couple of days of his situation, there will be no more medical updates until Saturday. Now, that will, of course, come as a great relief to the people gathered here, but also Catholics around the world who've been watching and praying for the Pope and hoping that he recovers very quickly.
Alex, thank you. Alex Rossi there with the latest from the Vatican. Well, let's just listen again to that message from the Pope released a little earlier.
Agradezco de todo corazón
I thank you from the bottom of my heart for your prayers for my health from the square. I am with you from here. May God bless you and the Virgin protect you. Thank you.
So a reminder of that breaking news, the Vatican saying it will stop issuing daily updates on the Pope's condition because of, as they have put it, the stability of the clinical picture. Now, for the first time, the number of victims of domestic abuse who have taken their own lives is higher than the number killed physically by their partners. And so rare are prosecutions, the numbers are likely even higher than those we know about. Now campaigners who have lost loved ones are demanding tougher sentences for abusers. Among them, Sharon Holland, whose daughter Chloe died 2 years ago. She's been speaking to Sky's Ashna Hurinag, and just to warn you that her report does include references to suicide.
She was an independent girl, so she was feisty, you know, she's just a lovely girl.
What Sharon didn't know is that away from home, behind closed doors, her daughter Chloe was morphing into a different person. Not by choice, but under the watchful and abusive eye of her former partner.
He was alienating her from friends, you know, he was always kicking off. She was turning up at people's houses with black eyes, making excuses for it, marks round her neck and everything else.
Unbeknownst to her mother, Chloe reported the abuse to police. But 2 weeks later, she took her own life. After her death, her evidence was used to charge Mark Masterton. He'd been manipulating her, assaulting her, and encouraging her to self-harm.
She said on a few occasions of him attacking her, his eyes went from blue to black, and it terrified her. The video statement I've watched, he was telling her to take her life. He was giving her knives up against her throat and then saying, "You do it."
Masterton admitted coercive and controlling behaviour and was jailed, but only for 41 months.
I was gutted because we needed to get over 4 years for him to go on this dangerous persons list, so he could be monitored as high risk. No amount of years is going to bring her back or make up for what he's done, but he needed to get more than that.
The maximum sentence for coercive control is 5 years. Sharon is now leading a campaign to increase it. Sentences for offences like it are being considered as part of an independent review as the government looks to halve violence against women and girls. There are now more victims of domestic abuse who take their own life than those who are killed by their partners. And there could be many more, as not all deaths are investigated.
Most of the families that come to us where there's been a suicide as a result of domestic abuse, the biggest issue for them is the lack of acknowledgement of what's happened to their loved one.
For the families you advocate for, how rare is it to get a criminal investigation?
Very rare. It will be deemed a suicide, and it may well be a suicide, but we don't have that investigative desire or that professional curiosity to look behind that suicide and why that happened.
Chief Crown Prosecutor Kate Brown says there is a desire to unpick the potential connection between abusive behaviour and a victim's death.
As the understanding in the sector grows, I think there's more insight and knowledge and determination and awareness that there is likely to be a link to be found, or at least to be investigated.
And that's something that hasn't always been there, that's something you're working on with police?
Yes, and we are sharing our expertise that we're learning from these cases, not only within our group of prosecutors who are looking at these cases, but also with the police nationally.
The Crown Prosecution Service is actively looking into a number of cases similar to that of Kienna Dawes, who was abused by her partner before she took her own life. There are many families, like Chloe's, who believe the same happened to their loved ones, but justice for them either falls short or lies beyond reach. Ashna Hurinag, Sky News.
Well, Sharon's story is not unique. I've been speaking to a woman who believes domestic abuse was a factor in her sister's suicide. She says a coroner has asked police to reopen an investigation into her sister's death, but nobody has been charged with any offence. To protect her anonymity, we've had her words voiced by an actor.
He'd convinced her that none of us loved her. The kids didn't love her anymore, and their life was basically just him and her.
Can you talk about that assault in the October? Because was that the first real sign for you that things had taken a dreadful turn for your sister? Because you had an inkling, you could see the coercive control in action, but as with so many domestic violence victims, the majority of it remains behind closed doors, and even those closest to them don't get to see the full extent of it. So perhaps you can tell us what happened in that October that changed everything.
They started having an argument, and that's when he assaulted her. Threw her out of the house, smashed her head off the floor. When I spoke to her in the hospital, she was obviously devastated that it got to that point and got that bad. And I think she was more shocked at the extent that he'd gone to, especially in front of the children. And he actually got arrested. And I think he was held overnight. And then he got no further action. No matter how much I screamed to the police and then the hospital and the social workers, nobody wanted to listen. And I told them all that she would be dead by the end of the year. And I was 7 days out.
Can you take us through what happened in the new year?
I heard from her on Christmas Day. And I hadn't heard from her for a while up until then. And then New Year's Eve, she sent me the most beautiful voice note. Just explaining how sorry she was and how the new year was going to be her year. And if things get tough, it doesn't matter. She's going to be able to fix it because we're going to do it together. And she sounded really positive. And she reached out to the social workers as well, saying she wanted me to work with them. And, you know, she was. They said that the email was very positive. And then on the 7th of January, I got a call to say there was an incident at her house. So I rang one of her friends and got the friend to take the phone to the police on the scene. So I said, obviously, if he's there, this is because of him. You can't let him leave. Like, if she's dead, whatever's happened, it's going to have been down to him. And I kind of thought it was just going to be like a really bad assault or something like that. So I kept asking, you know, is she dead? Is she dead? They wouldn't tell me. And then they asked for my address, said that they'd send officers to see me. And then...
That's okay.
From then on, I knew she was dead because you don't send officers to somebody's house. And then the police turned up. All they could tell me was that she was found dead. And then we wasn't even left with, like, a port of call, like who to call, where or when to find out information. Like, where do I go from here?
Because to the police, this was not a crime being committed. This was a suicide. But in your mind, what was it?
It was a crime, straight away. I knew he'd had to have pushed her to do that. And the more I've learnt from her children, you know, that was something he used to say to her regularly. You know, why don't you just do us all a favour and just go and kill yourself and stop crying for attention?
And this is all coming from her children. This is what her 4 children were able to tell you afterwards.
Yeah. I feel like I failed her and her kids because it was so evident. You kind of ask so many questions to just not even really, like, get answers, you know? To, you know, did she have bruises on her body? You know, it was that, you know, just no one wants to tell you anything. It's almost like it's a suicide, it's fine. Let's just leave it at that and not investigate things that are so obvious to anybody. I've explained it to them like friends, family, colleagues. They've all just been like, what? He's still walking around?
Still walking around and carrying on to the point where your sister's children still see him?
Yeah, they have run into him.
What do you want to happen now?
I'd like to see him be prosecuted. I'd like to fulfil the promise I made to my sister and her kids and see him in prison.
Well, Ashna Hernag, who's been covering this story for us today, joins me in the studio now. The final wish there is what so many of the families want. They want to see justice for their loved ones who were not physically killed by ex-partners or partners. And justice to them looks like manslaughter, but just how hard is that to bring about?
It's significant that we're talking about this today because it's actually the 2-year anniversary of Chloe's death, the woman that was in my piece right at the beginning. She was 23 years old when she took her own life. Ever since 2017, actually, there has only ever been, one person that's ever been convicted or prosecuted successfully for manslaughter following a domestic abuse victim suicide. So in 2017, a man called Nicholas Allen was sentenced to 10 years in prison for the manslaughter of a woman called Justine Rees, who took her own life, as the judge said, as a direct result of his actions. It's hence why you're seeing families that manage to get a criminal investigation start to pursue a coercive control one, because that's easier to gather evidence for. It's really difficult to get a manslaughter charge over the line. But as we're learning, as we've learned, it's really difficult to gather that, to get that that willingness to get that evidence going. And so what I've been seeing and hearing is that families are actually taking matters into their own hands. So, sorry, go on.
I was going to say families are relying heavily on coroner's report, because for many of them, if they don't get their day in court, you know, a coroner's report is something to them. It's some kind of answer, some kind of explanation.
Exactly that. That's exactly what we're seeing. Families taking matters into their own hands. In fact, today I spoke to one mother who believes that her daughter took her own life because of the sheer amount of abuse that she'd been facing. And she has taken it upon herself to go to her daughter's doctors, to her psychiatrist, to try and gather a bit of a picture, because innately, as we know, domestic abuse is hidden, it's unreported. So this mother had no idea necessarily the extent to which her daughter was going through such pain, but she's trying to gather her own evidence. And when families are doing that, they're realising that they're not being believed. They're being told it's hearsay, it's one person's word against another. So therefore, the coroner's reports become invaluable. We're seeing coroners now explicitly making that link between suicide and domestic abuse. And in one case, very recently, one coroner described there as being an unlawful killing. And the hope is that from that, maybe then there'll be a criminal investigation. But coroner's inquests, we know they take a long time to get over the line. And they only come after what's called a domestic homicide review. That's not necessarily done for everyone that's killed in these circumstances or dies in these circumstances, but they are at least some step in the right direction for those families.
You've done a lot of work on this, Ashna, and the lady I interviewed who felt that, you know, her sister took her own life as a direct result of her ex's actions. She said, you know, the families, they're not legal experts. They're just ordinary families. They haven't got the money for expensive legal advice. They're relying on free legals. They want better education for the police, because I know in a lot of these cases it's described as a lack of professional curiosity when it comes to suicide, to look at the bigger picture that contributed to it, and also legislation as well to sort of formalise that link between domestic abuse and suicide.
The Crown Prosecution Service, we know they are looking into cases that are similar to that of Kienna Dawes, who tragically took her own life a couple of years ago, and sentencing happened last year. But we know that they want to do better, and we know that they are trying to bring in new training for officers right around the country, but charities say that we're asking officers to do a really specialist job. Domestic abuse is a very specialist job. And also, in a situation that's so high-pressured and so tense and so emotional, when you're trying to offer condolences whilst also trying to unpick how this happened, that takes a lot of time and sensitivity. And whilst the Crown Prosecution Service say they are opening and looking into historical cases as well as new ones, they are of the understanding that they do want to do better, because there are hundreds of these families that believe this happened to their daughter. And just to say, in fact, only the statistics that have only been gathered in this way for the past 3 years. So, you know, just a thought for really how many women and men we're talking about in years gone by that may have done this. It's
interesting, isn't it, when you talk about police and specialist training for domestic abuse, it's seen as specialist, but, you know, it's the biggest threat to women and girls. OK, Ashna, thank you very much, Ashna Huranag, there covering that topic for us this evening. And if you've been affected by the story that we've been covering, you can contact the Samaritans at any time, the number 116123, or email joe@samaritans.org. Still to come here on the UK Tonight, we'll have the latest from Cumbria. The 10-year-old girl who was killed when a car crashed into a sports pitch in Kendal has been named. And we'll be discussing the Safer Phones Bill ahead of its appearance in the Commons tomorrow.
We're trying to see as much as we can.
We start with breaking news. An historic day here today.
The golden age of America begins right now.
A long-awaited ceasefire is now underway.
First question, Sky News.
This is a huge moment.
It's incredible.
Now to California.
Do you owe citizens an apology? Have you nothing to say?
Jane Secker, Sky News. Would you like to respond to us now?
Beth Rigby, Sky News.
In principle, would you agree to do that?
Criticism of you is banned. How is this a fair election?
The cameras are poised, waiting to see what the president might do next.
Thank you. Thank you all.
We're going to do this 100 times every day for the next 3 months.
Why have we agreed to this?
Raises many questions about many things.
Actually seeing people impacted, she was so upset.
It was powerful. They kind of couldn't believe they were being berated here.
Very much on my terms, I think was the subtext. News happens fast around Donald Trump.
It was a kind of wow moment.
Yeah, that's what it feels like, doesn't it?
It's Trump world, and we just live in it.
So, where next?
Follow Trump 100 wherever you get your podcasts.
When you cover big, tense protests, there's almost always a moment when the atmosphere changes. There's a different noise, and you start to smell tear gas in the air.
As a team, we've interviewed some of the biggest stars in the world. Tom Cruise, Brad Pitt. It can be incredibly surreal being swept up in their world, but we try to give you an honest sense of how these people really are.
When we spoke to the fishermen down in Cornwall, all the politics from Westminster was a million miles away. This was about their jobs, their livelihoods.
Sky News get the full story first.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah.
The battlefield is outside the barricades. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent. It's really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
Police have confirmed a child who died following a crash involving a car on a sports pitch in Cumbria was a 10-year-old girl called Poppy Atkinson. Her family released a statement today paying tribute to her, saying the hole in our lives and so many around us that Poppy leaves is enormous. We will never be whole again. This world has lost a spirit like no other. She was a force of nature. She was so special. She was too good for this world. Sky's Fraser Maud has more from Kendal.
It is just heartbreaking to hear those words from young Poppy's family. She was here with other young girls playing football on the AstroTurf here at Kendal Rugby Club when this incident happened at around 5 o'clock yesterday afternoon. Police still investigating how it came to happen. A black BMW i4 car came through the railings from the car park, not from the main road, from inside the car park, through the railings, knocked them over where you can see those orange cones there behind me, fell 6 feet or so onto the playing surface itself, and it was there that it struck 10-year-old Poppy, killing her and injuring one of her 8-year-old playing colleagues. That 8-year-old girl has received what police have described as non-life-threatening injuries, although we're unsure exactly what the extent of those injuries are. As you say, Poppy's family have released an emotional tribute today. Many people have been coming down here to the scene, leaving flowers, young children in their football kits, shedding tears, paying tribute to Poppy. And her parents were saying that she was determined, she was absolutely desperate to become a professional footballer. She wanted to play for Manchester United when she grew older. They say that she idolised Ella Toone, Georgia Stanway, Kobbie Mainoo and Lionel Messi. They say that she was a small and petite 10-year-old girl, yet she played in an age group above her age, representing Kendal United and the county at under 12 level. They say that the hole in their lives that Poppy leaves is enormous, will never be whole again. And in response to the news that she was a keen Man United fan and a fan of those Manchester United players, the club itself has issued a statement today. Man United have said in a statement to PA News, on behalf of Ella, Kobbie and everyone at Manchester United, we send our heartfelt condolences to Poppy's family and friends for their devastating loss. Rest in peace, Poppy. Other clubs have also paid tribute. Local clubs around here, the local FA, the local youth league, has said that there'll be a minute's silence at all age groups in all their matches this weekend in memory of Poppy. And in the meantime, the police investigation continues, trying to determine whether it was driver error and mechanical fault that caused that car to crash through the railings and onto the pitch, killing Poppy. They have arrested a man, a 40-year-old man from Lancaster, has been arrested on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving. He will be helping police with their inquiries. They'll also be carrying out a detailed forensic examination of the car involved to see if there were any faults in the mechanisms operating that car. In the meantime, the community here, the football community and Ella's friends and family are left to mourn a beautiful and promising and determined young girl.
The Chancellor has confirmed that there will be reform of the welfare system as the government seeks to cut billions from budgets, insisting she's going to continue to meet her fiscal rules. Speaking to Sky's Beth Rigby on our Electoral Dysfunction podcast, Rachel Reeves said that the welfare system is letting down taxpayers. And she once again committed to spending 2.5% of GDP on defence by 2027 due to the enormity of the situation facing Europe.
Unlike the previous government, we're not going to have another budget in the spring. We only just had one in October. And as I said at the time, that was a sort of a once in a generation, once in a parliament type budget. I think people also know that we need to get better value for money for what taxpayers put in, and also we've got to reform our welfare system, because at the moment it's letting down taxpayers because it's costing too much. It's letting down our economy because there's too many people trapped on out of work benefits, and it's letting down the people who are recipients of benefits because they are trapped on benefits rather than actively supported back into work. So we don't need an Office for Budget Responsibility forecast to tell us that we've got to reform our welfare system. We're going to do that because it's the right thing to do.
And you can listen to Beth's extended interview with the Chancellor on tomorrow's episode of Electoral Dysfunction. You can scan the QR code that's on your screen right now to follow the pod. Right, let's bring you some breaking news. This is coming from Washington. Donald Trump signing executive orders in Washington right now. He has just signed an order that is delaying new tariffs on Canada for 1 month. This just coming into us as breaking news. It's similar to the reprieve that was announced earlier for Mexico. So that breaking news within the last few minutes, President Trump signing an order that delays the new tariffs he's imposing on Canada for 1 month. More on that coming up in the world that follows this programme with Yalda Hakeem at 9 o'clock. So to come on the UK Tonight, we're going to discuss how to make smartphones safer for children. That's on the way. Welcome back. We're going to take you to the White House now. Latest pictures we have there. President Trump signing executive orders. He has just signed an order that will delay those new tariffs on Canada for 1 month. Let's listen in. He's answering questions from reporters who are in the room.
10 cents from China. They never did. But when COVID came along, we had to focus on COVID. We did a great job. We got rid of that. We ended up handing over with a market that was higher than it was previous to COVID coming in. But this is very much about companies and countries that have ripped off this country, our beloved USA, and they're not going to be ripping us off anymore. So, you know, I think that has an impact on the market.
Mr. President, sir, this is a slate of nominees that's been prepared by the Presidential Personnel Office. It includes a number of sub-cabinet level appointments, a number of your ambassadors that have been previously announced, and also, crucially, given the administration's concerted effort to focus on violent crime, it includes a number of U.S. attorneys in major cities that have real crime problems.
Okay. Some very good people, too.
Thank you, sir. And then we have a number of ceremonial proclamations that Lindsay Halligan is going to...
So 2 very special proclamations, the first of which is a proclamation that proclaims March 2025 as Women's History Month in honor of all the wonderful women in your administration, all the wonderful women in America, and in honor of everything you've done for women and this administration has done for women in just, what, a month and a half? So.
Yeah, we've done a lot, and women have done a lot for us, right? This is an honor. We have a wonderful woman here, Maria Bartiromo.
Thank you so much.
Nice to have you, Maria.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thanks for all that you're doing for women.
Thank you. She's going to do an interview of me later. Maybe I shouldn't do this interview. I should be like Biden, not do any interviews. That's great. Women, we love you.
We love you too, sir.
Thank you.
Okay.
Excellent.
So the second one is a proclamation proclaiming March 2025 as Irish American Heritage Month in honor of, well, to commemorate our amazing friendship between America and Ireland, and to just honor all of the Irish Americans. And I'm a little bit biased because I'm American and Irish, but.
Good. Good. Well, great people. Great
St.
people.
Patrick's Day is coming up as well.
And they voted for me in heavy numbers, so I like them even more. You have to like it. You know, you're not supposed to, but you have to like that. All right. So for the Irish American people, proclamation. Okay. Thanks, Lindsay.
Mr. President, your envoy, Steve Witkoff, told us a little while ago that if Hamas does not release hostages, that the U.S. and Israel could take some action. What does that mean in your eyes? Is that military action? Would you join strikes with Israel?
Well, you're going to find out. I had the honor of spending a lot of time yesterday with quite a few of the people that we got out, and I can't believe how badly treated they were, really badly treated. Stories that you wouldn't even believe. Some of it was documented, some of it was so bad you couldn't really, I don't think you can put it on. And it's a shame. And they said one thing, they have 59 hostages, of which many of them are killed. They want to know if we could just continue. They said without us, look, Biden wasn't able to get anybody out. We came along and they started releasing. But we have 59 left, of which 24 are living. The rest are dead. And I put out a statement. It's sort of self-explanatory, I think. But somebody's going to have to get a lot rougher than they're getting. It's a shame. And those 24 that are living, because they were with them just 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, depending on when they got out. But they said they're in very bad shape.
You spoke today with your cabinet members and Elon Musk.
I did.
What did you tell them in regards to Elon Musk and his authorities to carry out actions?
We had a great meeting. We had Elon and we had some of the representatives for the business reps. We also had most of the cabinet members, not all of them. It doesn't really pertain to all of them, but many of them. And I thought it was a really good meeting. It was about cutting because everybody knows the country's way out of control in terms of the number of people. We have many people that don't work. We have many people probably that aren't even living that are getting checks. And we're finding all of that out, and it's being reported. We're going to save hundreds of billions of dollars. We've already saved a lot. And parts of it are contracts that are expired that we're paying on. Many crazy things that, you can see it happening. It shouldn't happen, but you can see it happening. You see a lot of it being put out. But the other thing I think most important for today, I want the cabinet members to keep good people. I don't want to see a big cut where a lot of good people are cut. I want the cabinet members to keep the good people, and the people that aren't doing a good job, that are unreliable, don't show up to work, et cetera, those people can be cut. So I had a meeting, and I said, I want the cabinet members go first, keep all the people you want, everybody that you need. And it would be better if they were there for 2 years instead of 2 weeks, because in 2 years they'll know the people better. But I want them to do the best job they can. When we have good people, that's precious, that's very important, and we want them to keep the good people. And so we're going to be watching them, and Elon and the group are going to be watching them. And if they can cut, it's better. And if they don't cut, then Elon will do the cutting.
So, Mr. President, is that a reflection that you think Doge and Elon Musk have been moving too quickly?
No, I think they've done an amazing job. They've done an amazing job, and look at what they found. I read it the other night in the speech. I mean, they found these things where billions of dollars has been poured down the drain to things. That's not about people, that's about contracts where billions and billions of dollars was just thrown out the window. It probably got kickbacks. I'm sure there were tremendous kickbacks for the people that authorized those contracts. But no, Elon has been really teaching everybody about the numbers that you can do. But what I want is I want the numbers, but I also want to keep the good people. We want to get rid of the people that aren't working, that aren't showing up, and have a lot of problems. And so they're working together with Elon, and I think we're doing a really great job. We're cutting it down. We have to for the sake of our country. You can't have that kind of fat. It's bloat, and like nobody's ever seen before, where you need 20,000 and they have 120,000 people, and you just don't need that many. And it happens with companies, and it happens with governments, I guess. You could go to a lot of governments, you'd see the same thing. But we're trying to get it down. We want to be able, next year, we could balance the budget. I think there's a good chance we could balance the budget next year. We have a lot of good things happening. Plus, we have a lot of revenue things happening, like today with the shipbuilding. And this gentleman behind me is going to create a lot of jobs. And he's about the biggest there is in the world. We had the biggest chip maker in the world here a few days ago. He's going to be spending $200 billion on building plants. We're not giving him any money to build it either. It's that chip act is ridiculous, where the Biden thing, where they give billions of dollars to people that have nothing but money. They're not going to spend that money. They're just taking that money. We're giving nothing. They're coming in because of the tariffs, because they don't want to pay the tariffs, and they're opening up big. So, but with respect to people, I said, I want to cut the people, but I want to keep the good people.
President, tariffs, sir, can you walk us through the next steps on this? Steel and aluminum tariffs are due to kick in next week on Canada, Mexico, and every other country. Are those going to be modified as well?
No, those aren't modified. Those are happening next week. And the big one will be on April 2nd when reciprocal tariffs. So if India or China or any of the countries that really, India is a very high tariff nation. I'll tell you what's a high tariff nation is Canada. Canada charges us 250% for our milk product and other product, and a tremendous tariff on lumber and things as such. And yet we don't need their lumber. We have more lumber than they do. We don't need Canada's lumber. So what I'm doing is I'll be signing an executive order freeing up our forests so that we're allowed to take down trees and make a lot of money and then reharvest trees. Also, we're cutting fire divides. A fire divide is a 50-yard to 70-yard swath where the trees can't, it's long enough so trees don't burn forever until you can get them out. And those trees can be sold and made a lot of money with. So, but we'll be doing that. We don't need trees from Canada. We don't need cars from Canada. We don't need energy from Canada. We don't need anything from Canada. So where we can be self-sustaining, which is in most things. Look, we have more oil and gas than anybody. Our forests are massive, massive forests. We're just not allowed to use them because of the environmental lunatics that stopped us. So I'm going to be freeing that up very shortly so that we don't have to go to other countries to buy lumber. You know, why should we be buying lumber from other countries, paying tariffs, paying big prices, extraordinary prices, and we have lumber. We have the best lumber. Go ahead.
And this USMCA exemption that you're essentially announcing today for this 1 month?
It's just a modification, short term, because I didn't want to hurt the American. It would have hurt the American car companies if I did that.
Would you consider the same sort of exemption or pause for the auto tariffs you're talking about next month?
We're not looking at that, no.
You're not
No, we're not looking at that, no. No.
Are you considering revoking the TPS for the Ukrainians who live here in the U.S.?
What about it?
Are you considering revoking the TPS status for the more than 200,000 Ukrainians who live here in the U.S.?
What are you saying?
The Ukrainians that are here in the U.S., they're under a TPS status.
On GPS?
TPS, temporary.
Oh, I thought you said GPS.
TPS.
Yeah.
There was some news saying that they were going to be revoked and they were going to be deported from the country. Are you considering that for the
Well, we're not looking to hurt anybody, and we're certainly not looking to hurt them. And I'm looking at that, and there were some people that think that's appropriate and some people don't, and I'll be making a decision pretty soon. Okay?
President Trump
But we're not looking to hurt them.
President Trump
Especially Ukrainians. They've gone through a lot. Yeah, Peter?
The clocks are going to spring forward on Sunday. When are you going to get rid of daylight savings time?
Okay, are you ready? So, this should be the easiest one of all, but it's a 50-50 issue. And if something's a 50-50 issue, it's hard to get excited about it. I assume people would like to have more light later, but some people want to have more light earlier because they don't want to take their kids to school in the dark. And it's very much, it's a little bit one way, but it's very much a 50-50 issue. And it's something I can do, but a lot of people like it one way, a lot of people like it the other way. It's very even. And usually I find when that's the case, what else do we have to do?
And I got to ask, because you were talking about this in your joint address, you were talking about Butler. It's been 7 months. Why do you think we don't know more about the guy who shot you in the ear?
Yeah, oh, well, and the second one with all of his cell phones. So I want to find the answers. I've told them. In fact, today I said, I want to find, we can no longer blame Biden for that one. He should have released that a long time ago. So they are giving me a report next week sometime, and I do believe I'll be releasing. I want to release the report. A lot of people have asked that question. You had one who had 3 apps, 2 of which were foreign, supposedly, and who has the biggest white shoe law firm in Pennsylvania, even though they don't live in necessarily a white shoe area. What's that all about? His law, you know, the law firm. The other one had 7 or 6 cell phones, and I don't have 6 cell phones. And why would somebody have 6 cell phones? So we're going to be releasing a report on that soon, Peter.
But based on what you're saying right there, the lack of information and the data points that you just gave, does that make you think that there's some part of that there's some bigger?
It could be. Well, it makes other people think that. It makes me think it a little bit too. I say, when you have 3 apps and 2 of them are foreign, and you had an FBI that wouldn't report on it, they didn't want to say why, I would say that could be suspicious. And then on the second assassin, you had, you know, and by the way, I have to tell you, Secret Service did a great job on that by spotting him. But on the second one, he had 6 cell phones. That's a lot of cell phones. And a couple of them had some strange markings on them. So, yeah, I want to find out, and I would be willing to release it. I mean, maybe there's a reason that we shouldn't, so I don't want to get too far ahead of my skis, but yeah, I would be very willing to release that. I'd like to see it. I want to see it myself, Peter.
President,
Not only you, I want to see that one myself.
Mr. President,
May I?
Yes.
President Macron yesterday said that France was ready to offer its nuclear protection to other European countries. What do you make of it? And in this case, would the US also maintain a nuclear umbrella for European countries?
Well, France is also willing to put soldiers into Ukraine for safety reasons if we can get it. I will say that we've made a lot of progress with Ukraine and a lot of progress with Russia over the last couple of days. And it'd be great to bring that to an end so we don't have to talk that way about nuclear. It'd be great if everybody would get rid of their nuclear weapons. You know, we have Russia and us have by far the most. China will have an equal amount within 4 or 5 years. And it would be great if we could all denuclearize, because the power of nuclear weapons is crazy. It is crazy. And, you know, I was very far along a process with Russia, despite the Russia hoax, which didn't make it easy. It was a total hoax, a total rigged hoax by some bad people. But despite that, I was very close to having a program with Russia, denuclearization, and we were going to get China. I spoke to President Xi about it, and he would have been very happy to have gone along with it. But bad things happened, like an election that was rigged happened. And so we had to come back 4 years later. But I would very much like to start those talks. The opposite of what you say, the denuclearization would be incredible.
Mr. President, on the auto tariffs that you were talking about, I know yesterday you spoke with the big three. Did you tell them that no more exemptions were on the way, and what was the reaction?
I told them, that's it. This was a short-term deal. And they came back to me yesterday. They said, could we have some help on the tariffs because of the speed? And I said, look, I'm going to do it, but that's it. Don't come back to me after the April 2nd. I don't want to hear from you after April 2nd. We're not going to be doing it anymore. I want to help them.
What was their response?
They didn't complain, but I helped them short-term during this short-term transition. April 2nd is going to be a very big day for America.
Mr. President, my understanding is that the longstanding U.S. policy is that we do not negotiate with terrorists. So how did you come to the decision to send somebody from your team to negotiate with Hamas?
We are having discussions with Hamas. We are helping Israel in those discussions because we're talking about Israeli hostages. And we're not doing anything in terms of Hamas. We're not giving cash. We're not giving $6 billion like you hear other administrations give. In fact, I got 59 hostages out, and we gave nothing. In 59, we gave nothing, not including what's going on with Hamas. I mean, I consider that something where we're helping Israel for the most part. We had a couple of hostages, as you know. We got a couple of hostages out, American hostages.
Mr. President,
But certainly, Peter, you know, you have to negotiate. There's a difference between negotiating and paying. We want to get these people out. If you would have seen the people yesterday, maybe you did, I don't know, but if you would have seen them, the way they spoke about their captivity, it was unbelievable. It's terrible.
Are you thinking about making any changes to NATO where a NATO country gets attacked, but they're not paying enough dues, so the United States doesn't defend them?
Well, I've said that to them. I said, if you're not going to pay, we're not going to defend. I said that 7 years ago. And because of that, they paid hundreds of billions of dollars. I said, if you're not going to pay your bills, we're not going to defend you. And it also went for the attack. But if they got attacked, they said, well, does that mean you won't defend us? I said, are you current or are you delinquent? They said, if we were delinquent, would you? I said, nope, I would not. And because of that, as you know, hundreds of billions of dollars came into NATO. You wouldn't have NATO right now if I weren't there. And your previous Secretary General has said that. He said he's never seen anything like it. When I came to NATO, when I first had my first meeting, I noticed that people weren't paying their bills at all. And I said I should wait till my second meeting, and I did. And I brought that up. And I said, if you don't pay your bills, we're not going to participate. We're not going to protect you. And when I said that, as soon as I said that, it was amazing how the money came in. The money came in, and now they have money. But even now, it's not enough. It's really not enough. They should be paying more.
Mr. President, question on the investment, sir. You've overseen about
$2 trillion worth of domestic private sector investments come in just about 2 months. This is the newest one. It comes after your announcement of a new shipbuilding office at the White House during your joint session to Congress. Can you talk about why this is important, not only for national security, but to continue the renaissance of domestic manufacturing?
Well, we have to maintain a strong country. We have to maintain, and we want to pay off debt. We have a lot of debt, but that'll start coming off quickly when this all comes around. Look, we've been supporting the whole world. You mentioned NATO and you mentioned other things. We've been supporting the whole world. When I first came in, we were paying almost 100% of NATO. NATO it was crazy. We were supporting NATO. We were paying the bills.
President Trump speaking to reporters in the White House a little earlier. He's been signing executive orders saying they have made a lot of progress on Russia and Ukraine. He's also talked about tariffs, saying he's delaying the tariffs on Canada for 1 month. More coming up next with Yalda Hakim in The World. Stay tuned.